Welcome to Finding Family DNA, the show about finding and connecting birth families, with your host, Jay Rosenzweig, founder and CEO of BirthParentFinder.com. And now, here's Jay.
Hi, everyone. This is Jay Rosenzweig, the founder and CEO of BirthParentFinder.com, and welcome to Finding Family DNA. This is episode 27 with Misty Gillis, our genetic genealogist. Misty, how you doing today?
I'm good, Jay. How are you?
I'm great. So not only am I the founder and CEO of BirthParentFinder.com, but our audience doesn't know that I am the owner of JR Investigations, a private investigation firm, and I've been doing investigations since 1990. And the only reason I'm bringing that up is because our guest today is, and we'll get it to him later, is a licensed private investigator in the state of Tennessee and also an investigative genetic genealogist who is a former colleague of yours and a friend. So we'll get into that in a minute. But again, we want to talk about our Patreon, which I don't always talk about it, but we really want subscribers to our Patreon because with the money we collect from Patreon, we will use that to help people who don't have the funds to try to find their family, put their family trees together, and connect them to their family. And again, we don't have a lot of subscribers to Patreon, but we would like more. So we do have extra content for our Patreon, and especially this particular episode, we'll have our guest, Jeremy Lipford, talk about tricks of the trade, tips, and advice to people who are searching using genealogy and DNA. So on that note, Misty, this episode is really about how genealogy and the PI industry work together. And we talked about this briefly the other day preparing for today's show. So I know that our guest today does a lot of missing persons cases. And I was thinking my history of missing persons cases didn't involve DNA. But what it did involve was my investigative skills. And most of the cases I worked finding missing persons involved people that were homeless, people that basically were on medication, who were off their medication, came to California and LA from other states and were on the streets. So I would get hired to do this work. And I don't know if you know this, Misty, I was really successful at it because I knew LA really well. I started in the investigation business in 1982 and I went on the streets doing investigation. I learned Skid Row. I learned about South Central Los Angeles, and also Venice Beach was a lot of homeless people. So when people come to LA, where do they usually wind up? Where do you think they wind up, Misty?
Hollywood?
Hollywood's one. I hated Hollywood. Hollywood was the grossest, most disgusting place. But I would go there. I'd bring some other investigators looking for these people. We would mostly find them, honestly, Skid Row, Los Angeles.
That was going to be my second guess.
Yeah, and then I had one case where a news anchor in Los Angeles, this was years ago, hired me to find his sister. She had problems. There were medical issues. There were psychiatric issues. So I found her in Skid Row in a facility.
Oh.
Well, there's HIPAA laws that they won't tell you she's there, but for some reason we knew she was there, and she got reconnected with her family. They were all happy. Of course, we couldn't go public with this because it was a news anchor, and all ended well. And then in the valley that I live in, there's a homeless area. Somebody hired me once. Their son was missing. I don't know what state it was from, probably North Carolina. And I found him with 3 private investigators, couldn't find this guy. I found him in like an hour.
Oh, wow.
Well, because he had a debit card. And I knew he used it at a certain store, and I knew exactly the homeless area he was in. And they told me what kind of car he had. I saw the car in this parking lot, and next thing you know, I knock on the window. There he was. And sure enough, they came 2 days later, drove him halfway across the country. Of course, he tried escaping a few times. But when you're dealing with adults, it's difficult because the police don't get involved because they're adult missing people.
Right.
And there's no evidence that there was foul play. So on that note, that's going to segue into episode 24 was with Caitlin. She was a missing person initially from Memphis, Tennessee. And I'm going to bring our guest in right now, Jeremy. I want to talk quickly about Caitlin from Memphis. And she was homeless. And I know Jeremy's from Memphis. So Misty, can you just tell us a little bit about our guest and we'll bring him in?
So Jeremy is kind of a jack of all trades. He's a licensed PI. He works with Investigative Group. He's also a genetic genealogist with Moxie Forensics who assists law enforcement on investigations. He's a search angel in DNA detectives, and he's a missing person advocate. So he does a lot of work with missing persons to help with search and things like that.
So the reason why I brought up, hi, Jeremy, how are you?
Hey, good to see you guys.
Great. And I met Jeremy a few months ago at Roots Tech in Salt Lake City, and I've not met him before, but it was really good meeting him. And the reason why I brought up the Memphis case, you live in Memphis, right?
Just outside of Memphis, yeah.
Now, did you grow up there?
Yes, born and raised, went to Elvis's funeral when I was a baby.
Okay, so Misty, you remember Caitlin's accent, right?
I do.
Jeremy does not have an accent like that whatsoever, does he?
No.
I've been told that a lot.
It's interesting.
You have to talk to my mom to get the accent.
So this girl is 18 now, and she was on the streets in Memphis for a long time. And have you ever dealt with missing persons in Memphis?
I have not.
Yeah, and we didn't take this case as a missing persons case. We took this case because she was no longer a missing person. She was no longer part of the system. She was looking for her birth mother, and we reunited with her birth mother in Los Angeles a few months ago. But from what we were told, Memphis is pretty rough. Is that correct?
It's one of the most dangerous cities in the country, in the top 5.
Yeah, that's why I won't go there. But for our audience, I don't know if we told anyone this, but Caitlin's back in Memphis. She's no longer in California with her birth mother. So I don't know the situation on that. We won't do a follow-up. But so, Jeremy, you work missing persons cases using DNA. How does that differ from what I do?
Well, I mean, when you have a missing person, you know, if unfortunately they are a Jane Doe or a John Doe, the family members of those people need to submit their DNA so that if a Jane Doe and John Doe is found, using investigative genetic genealogy will tie back to them. So sometimes people will have worked with law enforcement and the familial DNA will be uploaded to CODIS locally. But like you were talking about earlier, sometimes these people are transit and they might be in another state, and CODIS is localized to a large degree. So, you may be missing from Tennessee, but found in California, and the DNA is uploaded to Tennessee and not California. So that's why it's important for those people who have missing family members for them to upload their DNA to GEDmatch and to other databases like that, where law enforcement can use, with permission, their DNA to help connect the dots.
So we're going to take our first break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about how you got into this business and go from there. So I don't know if you know this, Jeremy, but our sponsor for the show is GEDmatch.
Ah.
So here's a quick message from GEDmatch.
What if the missing piece of your family history is just a DNA match away? GEDmatch lets you upload your existing DNA results for free from any major testing company and compare them against a diverse global database. Whether you're adopted and searching for biological relatives or a genealogy enthusiast breaking through research roadblocks, GEDmatch provides the advanced tools you need to make meaningful connections. Discover your extended family network at gedmatch.com today.
And we're back with Jeremy Lipford, and we're going to talk about how you got started in the PI business, Jeremy.
Well, during the pandemic, a friend of mine took an ancestry DNA test, got his results back, and found out that the father that raised him was not his biological father. So he went to his parents, and they acknowledged that they knew that the father that had raised him wasn't his biological father. So he asked, well, who's my father? And they wouldn't tell him. They knew, but they wouldn't tell him. That really bothered him. So he told his wife, he told my wife, he told me. And I've always loved traditional genealogy. I love puzzles and mysteries. So I was like, let me see if I can figure it out. So it took me about 3 weeks. I built this family tree, reverse engineered back to Italy, then to an army base in Massachusetts where his parents, including the father he thought was his father, they were both stationed there. So his biological father was on the same army base as his parents. So I told him, so maybe there was a one-night stand, could have been a rape, some reason why they're trying to protect him for that. But anyway, that got me excited that I helped this guy. It was like 2 a.m. I found him on Facebook, looks just like a friend. And right around that same time, the TV show, The Genetic Detective came on with CeCe Moore. And I was watching that. And I was like, wow, that's the same process I just did to help this guy. And that's where I learned about the DNA Detectives Facebook group. And that opened up a whole nother world for me. And I just thought, well, I want to help people. And I'm actually located in Mississippi. I live just on the Tennessee-Mississippi state line. So my license is in Mississippi, by the way.
Oh, that's good to know. I actually did not know that because I was going to ask you the process of getting a license in Tennessee. But after you're done talking, we'll talk about the process for Mississippi. But go ahead.
It's not exciting. It's just an application. But yeah, so I got my PI license, and then around that same time, going to CrimeCon again, talking to the podcasters and asking how they got involved in things. I was like, well, if they can do that, I can do that. I have a full-time job that's not in this industry at all. So, when you talk about jack of all trades, my day is filled 24/7 with a variety of different things. I like to stay busy, but so I got my PI license because I wanted to be able to help people locally. And so that led to a podcast that I do with my sister called Riverside Homicide. So we're based on the Mississippi River, and we try to focus on local cases that are mostly unsolved. And that brings me the most joy working with the families, because these cases that we select are ones that didn't get a lot of media attention. They're underrepresented. And the families are just so appreciative of having someone, advocate for their family. But that's kind of how I got into this space. It was all because a friend took a DNA test and found out his dad wasn't his dad.
So I've been in the investigation business since 1982. I got my California license in 1988. So what I had to go through was 6,000 hours of on-the-job experience, have it written off by the people I worked for, and then get fingerprinted, go through. They didn't have live scan back then, but you had to pass the background check, and you had to take a written test. And did you have to go through any of that?
No, every state is different. I happen to live in one of the few states where it's super easy to get your PI license. It's literally an application and a check. So
wow. So you don't have to have any qualifying experience?
No. Not in Mississippi. Tennessee's a different story. Like, I've looked into that, and I do want to get my license there, but there's testing and all that kind of stuff involved in that state. But every state's different, yeah.
But there's no reciprocity, basically. If to cross, so you can't do investigation in Tennessee, correct?
I mean, not officially, yeah.
So there's not many PIs in Mississippi then?
Well, that I don't know. I haven't come across any. There is an organization. My podcast actually got featured on the local news for one of the cases that we were covering, and that resulted in kind of a flurry of attention from the outside. And a nonprofit reached out to me once. We've partnered up. It's called Missing in the Mid-South, and he's a licensed private investigator as well. The guy who started that. So we're trying to get that off the ground to drum up funds to help solve cold cases as well. So it's just, I'm all over the place.
So this is a relatively new area in the investigation industry, but what I'd like to see is qualifying hours for genetic genealogists toward a PI license. You cannot use those hours.
Yeah, that's right. You can't use
it for missing heirs investigation.
Right.
Even finding birth parents is what I do mainly. But yeah, it's really hard to get a PI license here, and it's getting more difficult. And our requirements now, we have to have a certain contract with our clients that includes when the start date is, when the end date is, and there's a whole bunch of things in there that you have to comply with in your new contract. And I actually, in my investigation business, Misty, I used that new contract the other day for a child custody case, and it was fine. It's an e-signature format. I have with Birth Parent Finder, I basically have a terms of engagement. So in other words, they fill out a form on our website, and then they check the box to agree to our terms. That's kind of like a contract, because people don't like signing contracts. And Jeremy, so where do you get your cases from?
I scour the internet looking for unsolved cases, and I go to the local libraries. I look at yearbooks. I'm, talking to family members. I'm just looking for things. Sometimes you can go to like the Crime Stoppers page where they're offering a reward, and they'll say, this case is, unsolved. So that's the, or there'll be posts on Facebook, this person's missing. So it just depends on, we try to localize it, near the Memphis area, but we cover, surrounding counties in cases that we're trying to help families with. I mean, I have one right now. There's a potential serial killer from the 60s, late 60s, early 70s. And 5 women were murdered within a 6-month period. All same, they were left naked in like a 3-mile radius. And I looked into the obituaries of those women, and I found one, and the woman's daughter had a very unique first name. And I said, well, I should be able to find her fairly easy. And I did, contacted her, and I said, when's the last time you've heard anything about your mom's murder? And she said 1970 something, like the police have done nothing. So she lives in Florida now, so she's planning on coming up here to Memphis, and we're going to go talk to the police together, because her efforts thus far, once I gave her the information of who to contact, the Memphis, as mentioned earlier, so inundated with crime, stuff's just getting buried.
They don't
actually
have like a dedicated cold case unit.
They do, but it's the cops that are about to retire. So they go there and they're only there for a little bit, and then you get a new one. Like there's nobody that's kind of manning the fort with any kind of consistency. And the last detective that she finally got a hold of said they couldn't find her mother's file. So that means they're not, it's not being worked, hasn't been worked since the 70s. So I'm looking forward to working with her on that. The first case we covered was a pregnant woman who was found in the passenger seat of her own car. She was due to give birth the next week, and she was found by some children in the neighborhood. And turns out no one's ever been arrested. She was the baby's father was married and had a family of his own. That case, no one's ever been charged with anything. And that family, that's the one we actually got featured on the news for, because that family really wants justice served. There's some suspicious things, and the police have lost evidence. And yeah, it's
So
the Memphis Cold Case folks don't.
You do this on a volunteer basis, obviously.
100%, yeah. Everything I do is volunteer.
So as far as making money doing this, you don't. Wow.
It's out of pocket. So I've gone to missing persons events I've gone to Atlanta twice for Missing Persons Day, just trying to educate the public on how they can take DNA tests to help if their loved one happens to be a Jane Doe or a John Doe, how that works. But yeah, all that's just out of the goodness of my heart.
Your passion project.
I do. I love
it.
I love helping people. To be fair, GEDmatch has helped cover some expenses on some of those trips, but again, that's not really the I went to Texas and did a grid search twice in the past 6 months looking for a missing person. That's just volunteering my time.
So when you
go ahead.
I was going to say, when you're got this mindset and you're working on a case, and you've got your genealogy hat or you've got your PI hat, how do you find you combine the two? Like, what's your thought process? When you're reviewing a case file now, do you look at it in a lens of what is available for genetic genealogy? What can we?
100%. I mean, even with the case that I've worked on with Moxie Forensics recently, which hasn't been announced yet, so I can't go into details, but what really was the red flag in that case was not genetic genealogy involved, right? It was looking at different database and saying, oh, this person lived right here, just a mile away from this person. And so you have to think outside the box, but it's all a toolkit, depends on every case is different in terms of clues and how old it is, the demographic, all that good stuff.
Do you feel like there's a specific PI tool set that you have that you can bring to the genetic genealogy that helps strengthen it?
Absolutely. So as a licensed PI, I have access to databases that most people in the public don't. So
Jay knows about that, yeah.
So I can, get your social security number, your relatives, your VIN number of your car, things of that nature. So those things are helpful. It's just an extra layer of insight into people's lives that, otherwise wouldn't have if you're just a traditional genetic genealogist.
Right.
And that's a big thing, being a PI. And I talk about this on this show. I talk about this on Off the Clock on KTLA. And you have those resources, right, Jeremy?
Yeah, I have people reaching out to me quite often. Just, will you run a search on this person and that person? So, I'm happy to do that to help because I do have access to that information.
Right. I don't take advantage of the databases that I use, and we won't discuss which ones because that's not part of this. I want to keep them out of it. But I do have one database that I have. I don't know if you subscribe to this one. I could put a first name in and a date of birth, and it gives me every person with that first name and date of birth so I can get their last name. And that is a great resource when I'm trying to locate birth parents.
I've recently did something similar. There was a baby that was kidnapped. A single mother gave birth and at a hospital, and this random lady came by. You know how the babies were in the window, and you're looking, which one's yours? And the mother's like, that was my baby. And the next day, this stranger comes back. She's like, oh, I'm here to visit my sister, and just kind of befriended this single mom. And,
I've heard of this case.
Yes, and found out where do you live? Oh, I live over there. And then, mother went home with the baby, and a week later or so, knock on the door, the stranger, hey, I'm in the area, just thought I'd see how you're doing with the baby. Mother says, I'm just tired, and take a shower. She's like, I'll watch the baby for a minute. So she came back and the baby was gone. So, this case is 30, 40 years old. Never been identified who the stranger was or where the baby is now. And I got to thinking, I was like, well, what if we search for anyone born in Georgia on the child's actual birthday and on the day that the baby was kidnapped? Because the new mother would have had to have given him a birthday. Does she give him his actual birthday or the date that she took and has claimed it as hers? So I did that, and I actually gave that to the detective, and he's like, how did you come up with that? I said, well, it's just an idea I had. I said, that way you can look at their ethnicity and cross them off and like narrow it down, and then try to go, just something, because right now you got nothing to go by.
So you definitely have the PI mindset, because Jay's got that mindset. He's always telling me, like, have you tried searching this way? Have you tried looking for this? And the thought process, he's been teaching me so much about the investigative field, and it's so complementary to genealogy, but it's so fascinating like you said, the outside of the box thinking that PIs have, and that you two especially have. It's wonderful.
Yeah, like I worked on a case when I was working with you, where the suspect was Hispanic, and it was in Idaho, I believe. And it wasn't a big community of Hispanic people. So I remember going and getting the copy of the city directory of that time period and just looking for anybody who had a Hispanic last name.
Right.
So this person has to be in this list somewhere. So it's just a creative, with the DNA databases being underrepresented by certain ethnicities, you have to come up with creative solutions sometimes.
Yeah.
So we're going to take our final break and be right back. And we have some more questions for you. One that I specifically told Misty I was going to ask you, and she actually knew what it was. So we'll be right back. This is Jay Rosenzweig, the founder and CEO of BirthParentFinder.com. If you're looking to find your birth parents or anyone in your birth family, give us a call at 866-572-3463 or go to our website, BirthParentFinder.com. We're here with Jeremy Lipford, who is a genetic genealogist and a private investigator. So, Jeremy, here's the question I want to ask you, and be honest. What's it like working with Misty?
Misty is great. This industry, I'll speak specifically to the investigative genetic genealogy industry, is filled with mostly women. So I'm kind of the odd man out a lot of times. And it can be an interesting a field of dynamics and personalities. And, there's a history of people who kind of who started, or they all feel like they started the industry. And there's a little bit of I don't know what the right word is, but it's been fun to learn. I've learned from Misty, because I came into this kind of green as well, just by volunteering and opportunities led to be able to work with Misty and others. And she's great. If she ever picks up the phone or texts me, needs anything, I'm always happy to help.
Thank you, Jeremy. I appreciate that. It's wonderful working with you, too. I will say this, he's right. There's very few men in our industry, but Jeremy, I love you.
Happy to represent.
And that is a fact. There are very few men in the genetic genealogy industry. And when I would put it out there for looking for people to work for my company, I would maybe get 1 or 2 men apply, and mostly women. 30, 40 women applied for this job. And Misty came along at the right time, actually. It couldn't be more perfect. But so how did you guys meet?
At Identifinders. So we had a mutual friend before we had met each other. And that mutual friend I had been working for Identifinders International. And that mutual friend recommended Jeremy for the team, and he started on the team. And, we had a very small team that all talked and kind of knew each other. So we got to know each other through there. We worked on a couple different cases at different times, the same cases.
Cross paths,
cross like that. And we just hit it off like gangbusters. And then ever since then, we've just been buddies. I always feel like if I need something, I can call him. If he needs something, he can call me. And we just, have been.
We finally got to meet in person this year.
We finally got to meet in person at Roots Tech. That was our first time meeting in person.
Yeah, this is Misty's first time at Roots Tech. And it is overwhelming. This is the first time I've been to Roots Tech where I didn't have a booth. And it was much better not having one. The networking was much better not having a booth. I did really well. And we recorded our podcast there. It kind of came out okay. We kind of had a sound issue, but we'll make it an annual thing. I love that conference. I would love to be a speaker there at some point. It's a process putting together your speaking plan and then have them approve it. You got to go through a lot of loopholes, but we'll get there. And like Misty and I are going to be speaking in September in Chicago at the World Association of Detectives Conference. It's not called a keynote, but we're a featured speaker on their last day. So and Misty's going to talk about Baby Holly and a couple other cases, and I'll talk about solving cases, finding birth parents using investigative work and DNA. And we put a really nice PowerPoint together. And obviously, we'd like to go on the touring circuit one of these days, right, Misty?
Hey, why not? Yeah.
Funny you mentioned Baby Holly. She just texted me the other day.
Really?
Yeah, she saw that I was volunteering, helping for a missing persons case in Texas, and she was just sending good vibes.
Oh, that's so sweet.
And who was that?
Baby Holly.
Baby nice.
Yep.
Very nice. She was on, I forgot what episode it was, but she was on one of our episodes, and we were talking about her book, and it was very interesting. So here's the question that we talked about this a little earlier. Why is it 95% women in this business? Does anyone have an answer for that?
I think it's because traditionally women were the story keepers in the family. So traditionally it was the grandmother who would sit in the rocking chair or sit at the house and tell stories of the generations. And they would also carry on traditions like food, culinary traditions. There'd always be stories about generations past. And those mostly came from women. So I think women intrinsically have this yearning to almost carry on that tradition. So we want to be the storytellers of our family. And of course, men do as well, but it's just not as frequent as I find women in the population. That's my theory, at least.
Absolutely. The family Bible, that's,
yes,
that the mother would maintain. For myself, my love or passion of genealogy is with my grandmother. I started at a very young age when I was probably before I was a teenager. And I was always fascinated with building the family tree, and it's just something that we continue to do together. She's I've taken her to the library, and the technology is a challenge, but she still loves participating with that.
But on the opposite side, in the investigation business, especially in California, it's mostly men.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, overwhelmingly majority men. Like I would say probably 90%. I don't know if that's accurate, but it's a lot. And finding a good female private investigator is very difficult. And I think there should be more of a demand for that, because I think female private investigators, it's a great asset. especially undercover.
Right.
But we don't. The investigation business, unfortunately, is a dying thing, and I hate to say it because there's other things people are doing. People aren't making money in the investigation business anymore. They're doing genealogy work, which is, and there's. I know you do volunteer work, but there's still a lot of money to be made in that industry. I know. So you work for this company, Moxie Forensics.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me a little bit about them, because I don't know much. I know they were at the conference at Bridge Tech, but tell me a little bit more about them.
Nonprofit organization that's helping law enforcement with cases all across the country, primarily Jane Doe, John Doe's, but also some murder, rape situations, but mostly the Doe cases. And that's all volunteer work. And they're a phenomenal group of people. They're very organized. They're young. They're passionate. They bring on people from all walks of life. They even have high school students that are being mentored in their program. We have retired detectives. So they have a really nice balance of different perspectives that are helping work the cases.
And then there's other companies that do what they do, but what makes them stand out? Sorry to put you on the spot, but
well, I mean, there's a lot of competition, we'll say, out there. But I mean, to me, it's the heart that comes through with them. Like you can tell they just care. They're not there to make money. They're not there to have their name, splattered across the media every day. It's just really about solving these cold cases and identifying people that really, it's just the passion behind it. That's what attracted me to this group.
Right. So basically the opposite of me, because I love it. It's different what I do. This is my career. I've been doing this forever. And the media attention, as Misty knows, for this particular business is very important because that's how we're known out there.
Sure.
And we do charge for our services, and it's not cheap, but we also do a lot of pro bono. And without charging, I couldn't have these podcasts. I couldn't do what I do because and of course we have bills to pay. But I mean,
there's nothing wrong with a for-profit, in this space. It's just for me in my current circumstances where I have a daytime job that's related to mortgage defaults. It's nothing in this space. For me, if I'm going to volunteer, to volunteer with this group of people who have the same passion that I do, that's what makes it, a good fit for me.
And the mortgage business these days is very good, I understand.
It depends on what side of the fence.
Well, I know in California, everything is so expensive here. The mortgage, insurance, it's really hard getting insurance.
A whole other podcast.
Yeah, exactly. So before we end this, and then we'll do our Patreon. Patreon is a great part of the show, and we're going to talk about in Patreon just things you could tell people about helping them in their search. So what I want to ask you is, you've been doing this for years now. Is there one specific case that stands out in your mind that is just your bread and your piece de resistance, basically, the case that you just love to talk about, the one that gave you the most passion and the most success?
Well, I mean, I think the case that I mentioned earlier with the pregnant woman, that's the first podcast case that we researched, and the first case that we met with the family. We met with the cold case detectives. That one's still near and dear to my heart. It's still not solved, but the expressions of appreciation from that family. I mean, they reach out to me every other month, and they're looking for. We've done creative ways. We've done letter campaigns to the prosecutor, to the cold case unit. Trying to get attention. We got on the local news. That family means a lot to me. So that one's, in that regard, the most endearing. I have another case that is a local missing person in Olive Branch, Mississippi, that I said, let's do it. I had never done a missing person case before in a podcast. So we start researching it, and it turns out she had two kids that were kidnapped more or less by her boyfriend, and he ended up in Wyoming. and he was keeping the kids there, and the kids escaped, or the daughter escaped and found an adult, and she's like, he's been sexually abusing me. And they're like, where's your mother? And she said, we haven't seen her since we lived in Olive Branch, Mississippi 6 months ago. So it turns out he gets arrested. He's in jail for prison for the rest of his life, like 11 counts of, child molestation and such. But turns out he's associated to another missing person in Washington, the state of Washington, who happened to be his half-sister, who he had a child with. So
Wow.
Just this one little case of this missing lady in Olive Branch. And now that I've talked to bad guy's ex-wife, I've talked to his children, I've talked to his sister. And they are all very much still in touch with me. And there's interest from a Netflix documentary perspective of maybe covering this guy. Because he's suspected of killing a whole lot more people. So that case was one that was simple, seemingly simple. It turned into a very complex, not international, but cross-country case. So it's just, those things are interesting to me, just because these families, even the families of the bad guy, want justice. They know that their father did bad things or their brother did bad things, and they want him held accountable for it. And I'm hoping that we can unearth something there.
Well, Jeremy, it's obviously seems like you're so passionate for this job that you love doing what you're doing. And I'm glad you took the time to be with us today. So how do people reach you on social media? Where do they go?
Well, I know one place to go. You have to follow Riverside Homicides Podcast on Facebook.
That's right. It's also on Instagram. I don't think I have any special LinkedIn for old people. Jeremy Lipford.
You can follow Moxie Forensics as well, and they'll have information on anything that you're working on. Yeah.
Yes.
But the podcast, how long you been doing that?
Probably 4 years.
Excellent. On that note, we're going to end our regular episode of Finding Family DNA. Again, thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Misty, for bringing Jeremy on today. And that's it for today. We'll see everyone next time, and stick around for our Patreon.
Thanks for having me.
If you want exclusive bonus segments of these episodes, join our Patreon at patreon.com/findingfamilydna. And if you are looking to start the journey of finding your family DNA, just go to birthparentfinder.com. Thank you for joining us on Finding Family DNA.
What's up is down, what's left is right. Chasing stars.